welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Weather blog, Boston Atmospheric Anomalies, Private Entries. Entry number 1, September 17, 2025. It's not often that I question my own expertise. After 15 years as a meteorologist, I've seen almost every atmospheric phenomenon New England can conjure. Heat waves that buckle asphalt, nor'easters that paralyze the city, even that bizarre thunder snow event 3 winters ago that had everyone talking. But what's happening over Boston Harbor right now? I can't explain it, and that terrifies me. Let me backtrack. I'm Dr. Eliza Morgan, lead meteorologist for Channel 7 News. My colleagues call me the Weather Witch because my forecasts are rarely wrong. I've built my reputation on understanding the subtle language of cloud formations and pressure systems. But 4 days ago, our instruments began detecting something impossible. It started with the barometric readings at our harbor monitoring station. At 5:43 a.m., pressure dropped suddenly, not gradually as it would with approaching storm systems, but as if someone had opened a door to vacuum. The digital readout actually flickered before stabilizing. I dismissed it as equipment failure until I checked the backup systems. Same reading. By that afternoon, a thin mist had formed over the harbor. Not particularly unusual for September in Boston, except for its color. A faint, luminescent blue-gray that reminded me of foxfire. Through binoculars, I watched it move against the prevailing wind currents. That's when I first felt that crawling sensation up my spine. That's when I started this private blog. The fog didn't dissipate with the afternoon sun like it should have. Instead, it seemed to thicken, concentrating along the waterfront, clinging to the surface like it was searching for something. I called the National Weather Service, but they brushed me off. Just an unusual temperature inversion, they said. Maybe I would have believed them if I hadn't seen the seagulls. Usually, seagulls are everywhere along the harbor, screeching, fighting over scraps, diving at tourists' food. But that day, not a single bird flew through the mist. I spotted a cluster of them perched on a building just beyond the fog's reach, unusually still and silent, all facing the harbor as if watching something. I stayed late at the station, running analysis algorithms on the fog's movement patterns. The computer kept crashing when I tried to generate predicted behavior models. At 7:16 p.m., the first emergency alert went out across the city. Boston Emergency Management Agency. Weather advisory. Unusual fog conditions developing over Boston Harbor and surrounding areas. Reduced visibility expected through the night. Mariners exercise caution. Further updates pending. Standard language, nothing alarming. But why issue an alert for harbor fog? It happens dozens of times a year without warranting special advisories. I called my contact at BEMA, Alan Richter, but got his voicemail. Left a message asking about the unusual advisory. On my drive home, I took a detour past the harbor. The streetlights around the waterfront had formed perfect halos of blue-tinged light, like tiny rings of frozen breath. The fog had expanded about 6 blocks inland, moving with purpose rather than drifting. There was something deliberate in its movement that made me pull over and put on my N95 mask, a habit left over from the pandemic years. Through my car window, I recorded a video narrating my observations. September 17th, 8:24 p.m. The fog advancement has accelerated since sunset. Visibility within affected areas approximately 15 feet. Note the unusual luminescence and the way it seems to pulse? I'm not sure that's the right word. It moves rhythmically, almost like it's breathing. I rolled down my window just an inch, wanting to collect a sample. The air that seeped in carried no harbor smells, no salt, No fish, no industrial odors from the shipping yards. Instead, it smelled like ozone and something else, something metallic yet organic, like blood and batteries mixed together. I quickly rolled the window back up, my heart suddenly pounding. That's when my phone buzzed with another alert. Boston Emergency Management Agency. Weather update. Harbor fog conditions intensifying. Citizens in waterfront districts advised to remain indoors. Close windows and doors. Air quality monitoring in progress. Follow local news for updates. Air quality monitoring caught my attention immediately. Standard fog doesn't trigger air quality concerns. I forwarded the alert to my producer with a note that I wanted to cover this story for tomorrow's morning broadcast. Back at my apartment in Back Bay, I checked the radar and satellite imagery, downloading historical weather data to compare patterns. Nothing in recorded history matched what I was seeing. Around midnight, I noticed a strange visual artifact in the latest satellite image. A spiral pattern in the fog, too perfect to be natural, centered exactly over the harbor. When I tried to enhance the image, my computer froze, then rebooted itself. I was still awake at 3:18 a.m. when all the emergency alert systems activated simultaneously. U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Emergency Alert System. This is not a test. Atmospheric anomaly detected over Boston Harbor. All citizens within 5 miles of waterfront advised to seal windows and doors with tape or plastic sheeting. Do not attempt to travel through affected areas. Remain calm. Further instructions will follow. My phone, laptop, and television all blared the alert in unison, the harsh tone jerking me fully awake. I rushed to my window. My apartment on the 12th floor usually offers a partial view of the harbor in the distance. What I saw made my blood run cold. The fog had advanced much farther inland, now just blocks away from my building. It moved like an incoming tide, but vertical, rising up the sides of buildings, flowing around obstacles. The streetlights within it glowed that eerie blue, but now they pulsed in a synchronized rhythm. 1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. Like a countdown or a heartbeat. As I watched, transfixed, a police helicopter approached the leading edge of the fog, spotlights scanning the misty boundary. When the light beam hit the fog, it didn't penetrate or reflect as it should have. Instead, the light seemed to be absorbed, creating momentary swirls of increased luminescence that moved like fingers reaching toward the helicopter. The aircraft veered away sharply. I'm writing this now at 4:30 a.m. because I need to document what I'm seeing while I still can. The fog will reach my building by dawn at its current rate. I've sealed my windows with plastic sheeting and duct tape as the alert suggested, but I'm not confident it will help. There's something deliberate about this fog, something hunting. The meteorologist in me says this is impossible. Weather doesn't behave this way. It doesn't think, doesn't hunt, doesn't pulse in rhythmic patterns. But the scientist in me also knows to trust observation over expectation. And what I'm observing is something entirely new. Another alert just came through, this one only to my phone. National Weather Service, Priority Communication. Dr. Morgan, your analysis of harbor anomaly requested. Report to Boston Federal Building, room 413 at 0800 hours. Discretion essential. NOAA Atmospheric Special Investigations. I didn't know NOAA had an Atmospheric Special Investigations division. Something tells me there's much more to this fog than a weather anomaly. I'll continue these entries as long as I'm able. But one thing is already clear. The fog over Boston is not natural. And I'm afraid we've only seen the first wisps of what's coming. Weather blog, Boston Atmospheric Anomalies, Private Entries. Entry number 2, September 18, 2025. The meeting at the Federal Building wasn't what I expected. I arrived 10 minutes early, dressed professionally but rushed, having barely slept. Room 413 turned out to be a converted storage space. No windows, harsh fluorescent lighting, a folding table with mismatched chairs. Not exactly the high-tech emergency response center I'd imagined. 3 people were waiting. A woman in an ill-fitting navy suit who introduced herself only as Dr. Chan Noah, a balding man with military posture who didn't introduce himself at all, and a third person who joined 5 minutes late, Detective Sophia Rivera, Boston PD, looking as exhausted as I felt. Dr. Chun spoke first. Dr. Morgan, we've been monitoring your weather station's data. The abnormalities you've recorded align with our findings. That's when the military man placed a document before me. Sign this before we proceed. Non-disclosure agreement. 20 pages of dense legal language essentially saying I would face federal prosecution if I shared anything discussed. I hesitated, pen hovering over the signature line. The public deserves to know what's happening, I said. The man's face remained impassive. The public deserves not to panic. We're containing the situation.
Detective Rivera snorted softly.
Like you contained those 3 warehouses? His head snapped toward her. That information is classified. So are the missing persons reports I'm getting, but they keep coming anyway, she replied, sliding a manila folder across the table. 7 people disappeared from the waterfront district last night. All security cameras in the area went offline simultaneously at 2:37 a.m. Dr. Chun quickly steered the conversation back. Dr. Morgan, we need your meteorological expertise. Our instruments can't get reliable readings inside the affected zone. I signed the document, my curiosity overriding my reservations. They proceeded to show me satellite imagery, atmospheric composition readouts, and radiation measurements, all showing impossible values. Data that contradicted itself. Weather patterns that defied known physics. The fog is expanding at an average rate of 0.8 miles every 6 hours, Dr. Chun explained, but not consistently. Pulses, retreats slightly, then surges forward. Like breathing, I murmured, remembering my observations from last night. The military man, I later learned he was Lieutenant Commander James Walsh, tensed visibly at my comment but said nothing. Dr. Chun continued, at approximately 0600 hours, the fog retreated entirely from the harbor, pulled back almost half a mile inland, then rushed forward again, covering an additional 1.2 miles in under 10 minutes. That's not how fog behaves, I stated flatly. No, agreed Dr. Chun. It's not. The rest of the meeting consisted of them extracting every observation I'd made without offering much in return. When I asked direct questions about the nature of the fog or their theories, I received deflections or silence. As we were leaving, Detective Rivera caught up with me in the hallway. Dr. Morgan? Got a minute. We ducked into a stairwell, where she spoke in hushed tones. They're not telling us everything. 3 warehouses in the harbor district were quarantined 2 days before the fog was visible. Before the first public alert, my stomach tightened. They knew it was coming, or they caused it, she said grimly. I need someone who understands this phenomenon, someone outside their chain of command. Take my card. I slipped her card into my pocket just as the stairwell door opened. Lieutenant Commander Walsh stared at us coldly. Detective, Dr. Morgan, your escort is waiting to take you out of the building. Back at the Channel 7 studio, my producer was furious. 2 government representatives had visited while I was gone, requesting we downplay the fog story. Just a temporary weather anomaly, they said. Nothing to worry the public about. They threatened our broadcasting license, Eliza, my producer hissed. What the hell did you stumble into? I was about to respond when every phone in the newsroom buzzed simultaneously. Boston Emergency Management Agency. Public advisory. Fog conditions persist in central and eastern Boston. Air quality remains within acceptable parameters. Residents may resume normal activities but are advised to remain indoors when possible. Waterfront areas remain restricted by order of federal authorities. My jaw dropped. Air quality within acceptable parameters? That's not. My protest was cut short by the weather station feed on my monitor. It showed bright sunshine over Boston Harbor, completely clear, no fog in sight. But I had just driven through lingering wisps of it on my way to the studio 20 minutes ago. They're lying, I whispered. My producer gave me a warning look. Drop it, Eliza. We'll report the official advisory. I didn't argue, but during my weather segment, I carefully mentioned localized fog conditions continuing in some neighborhoods and advised viewers to follow official guidance, but also trust their observations. It was the best I could do without risking both our jobs. By evening, something even stranger happened. People began posting videos of the fog online, but not all could see it. Two reporters standing in the same location, one filming clear skies, the other capturing writhing tendrils of blue-gray mist. Comment sections filled with arguments, accusations of digital manipulation. The discrepancies extended to emergency alerts. My phone received one warning: Boston Emergency Management Agency, shelter advisory. Residents of South Boston, Dorchester, and Harbor districts advised to remain indoors from sunset to sunrise. Secure all windows and doors. Report unusual phenomena to hotline 617-555-0123. But my neighbor Kevin Zhao, a medical resident at Mass General Hospital, showed me his phone with a completely different alert. Massachusetts Department of Public Health. Medical advisory. Healthcare workers report to assigned facilities for extended shifts. Respiratory complaints may increase overnight. Standard protocols remain in effect. What respiratory complaints? I asked him as we stood in our apartment building's lobby. Kevin looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes. ED's been flooded with people from the Harbor district. Shortness of breath, disorientation, strange bruising patterns. He rubbed his temples. But here's the weird part. Half the attending physicians can't see the bruises. They look like branching patterns, almost like frost on a window. But only some of us can see them. A chill ran through me, like how only some people can see the fog. Kevin nodded slowly. Exactly like that. And Eliza, he lowered his voice. 3 patients vanished from the isolation ward last night. Security footage shows their beds empty, but the doors never opened. They're saying it must be equipment malfunction. As we spoke, I noticed movement outside the lobby's glass doors. A tendril of fog curling against the glass, seeming to watch us. When Kevin turned to look, he saw nothing, but I could see it clearly, pulsing gently, leaving a faint iridescent residue on the glass. Kevin, when did you start your shift yesterday? I asked carefully.
6 Uhr morgens.
Worked through until midnight. And did you walk through the Harbor district? He frowned. Yeah, the T was down, had to detour. Weird mist everywhere. Why? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed with yet another alert. As he checked it, I noticed something on the side of his neck, just below his ear. A faint, branching pattern bluish against his skin. It hadn't been there when our conversation started. His eyes met mine, suddenly wary. I have to get back to the hospital. New directive. He turned to leave, and I caught a glimpse of his phone screen. Completely blank, despite him appearing to read a message from it. Outside, the fog pressed against the building, thicker now. And somewhere in the distance, military helicopters thumped through the darkening sky. I'm writing this from my apartment, doors and windows sealed again. The fog has reached my building, swirling 12 stories up to press against my windows like it's searching for a way in. Or like it remembers me. The discrepancies are everywhere now in what people see, in the alerts we receive, in the official statements versus reality. I don't know who to trust. All I know is that the authorities knew about this before it happened. Detective Rivera is right, they're hiding something. And whatever got into those 3 warehouses before the fog appeared, I think it's spreading. Weather blog, Boston Atmospheric Anomalies, Private Entries. Entry number 3, September 19th, 2025. I woke this morning to find my bathroom mirror covered in condensation, despite the air conditioning running all night. As I approached, still groggy and half asleep, I noticed the moisture wasn't forming the random patterns you'd expect. The droplets had organized themselves into delicate, fractal branches, the same patterns Kevin had described on the hospital patients. The same pattern I'd seen forming on his neck. I backed away, fully awake now. When I returned with my phone to document it, the pattern had dissolved into normal condensation. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, the morning news feed was a study in contradictions. Official channels reported the fog incident was subsiding, with only minimal disruption to waterfront activities. Social media told a different story. Hundreds of posts about expanded military checkpoints, communications blackouts in affected neighborhoods, and a surge of people checking into hospitals with unexplained symptoms. I tried calling Kevin to check on him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Same with his hospital department. When I tried our building manager to see if Kevin had come home last night, the call connected but contained only strange static punctuated by what sounded like rhythmic breathing. The station called. They wanted me to cover a press conference at City Hall. The mayor and federal representatives would be addressing public concerns about the fog. I arrived early, setting up in the press area. The room was tense, journalists whispering among themselves about conflicting reports. A reporter from the Globe showed me footage she'd taken near the harbor. National Guard troops in hazmat suits escorting people onto buses, but half the video showed only empty streets with troops gesturing at nothing. My cameraman seized the people. "I don't," she whispered. "They think we're all losing our minds." The officials arrived 20 minutes late. Mayor Daniels looked pale and kept tugging at his collar. Behind him stood Lieutenant Commander Walsh and 3 others in dark suits. The mayor's statement was brief and obviously rehearsed. "The atmospheric anomaly that affected parts of our city over the past few days is dissipating as expected. Environmental and health officials confirm no lasting impacts. Some residents may have experienced mild disorientation due to reduced visibility or anxiety, but there is no cause for ongoing concern." He then introduced Walsh, now identified as the regional coordinator for the Department of Homeland Security's Atmospheric Incident Response Team, a division I'd never heard of before this week. Walsh stepped to the podium, his expression stern yet carefully composed. "At 0600 hours this morning, we downgraded the situation from Level 3 to Level 1. Restricted areas will reopen by noon today. Citizens may notice an increased security presence as we conduct final assessments, but all emergency measures will be lifted by tomorrow." The Q&A session that followed was bizarre. Journalists asked pointed questions about missing persons, hospital admissions, and warehouse quarantines, but Walsh deflected each one as if they were asking about ordinary weather. The fog's unusual coloration was due to light refraction through suspended particulate matter, nothing more, he stated with absolute confidence. When someone asked directly about reports of people seeing branching marks on affected residents, Walsh's expression changed slightly, just a momentary tightening around his eyes. "There have been no verified reports of any physiological effects," he said flatly. "Next question." I raised my hand. Dr. Eliza Morgan, Channel 7. "Commander Walsh, can you explain why different individuals are receiving contradictory emergency alerts? Or why some people can see the fog while others can't?" The room went silent. Walsh stared directly at me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "There have been no contradictory alerts issued. As for differing perceptions, fog by its nature creates visual ambiguities. I suggest you consult an optometrist, Dr. Morgan." The press conference ended abruptly after that. As journalists filed out, I felt a hand on my arm. Detective Rivera pulled me aside, speaking under her breath. "Bold question. Not smart, but bold." She glanced around to ensure no one was listening. I accessed the warehouse manifests. All 3 were holding shipments from the same research vessel, the Hyperion Dawn. It returned from an Arctic expedition 2 weeks ago. What kind of expedition? Classified, but I found crew logs. Their last entries mentioned samples and containment protocols. Then communications stopped for 3 days before they reached port. Before she could say more, her radio crackled. She stepped away to respond, and when she returned, her expression had changed. "I have to go. Body found near the harbor. Unusual circumstances." She hesitated. "Be careful who you talk to, Dr. Morgan. And maybe don't go home tonight. I didn't follow Rivera's advice. I needed to check on Kevin. When I arrived at our apartment building, the lobby was deserted. The security guard's desk was empty, his coffee still steaming in its cup. The elevator felt wrong. Too cold, the air thick and metallic tasting. When it stopped at my floor, the hallway lights were flickering, casting strobing shadows that seemed to move independently of any visible source. I approached Kevin's door cautiously and knocked. No answer. I was about to leave when I noticed a faint blue light seeping from beneath his door, pulsing with that now familiar rhythm. 1, 2, 3, pause. Kevin, I called. It's Eliza. Are you okay? A sound came from inside. Not a voice, but a wet, rattling inhalation. Then silence. I backed away, fumbling for my keys, suddenly desperate to get inside my own apartment. As I retreated, I heard Kevin's door unlock from the inside. It began to open, revealing nothing but swirling blue mist within. I didn't wait to see more. Inside my apartment, I triple-locked the door and pushed a bookcase in front of it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type these notes. Something is happening to people who've been exposed to the fog. Something the authorities are covering up. At 7:43 p.m., every screen in my apartment, TV, laptop, phone, simultaneously activated with an emergency broadcast. Lieutenant Commander Walsh appeared, his face filling the screens. Department of Homeland Security. Emergency broadcast. Attention citizens of Boston. This is Lieutenant Commander James Walsh of the Atmospheric Incident Response Team. Despite earlier statements, fog conditions have intensified in central districts. All residents must remain indoors. Seal all windows and doors. Do not attempt to assist or approach disoriented individuals. Repeat, do not approach disoriented individuals, even family members. They are not to be considered dangerous, but medical protocols require isolation. Compliance is mandatory. The message repeated 3 times before the screens went dark. Seconds later, my phone buzzed with a different alert. Unknown sender, emergency override. Alert corrupted. Do N0T $T the air. Do not $T0 SE who cannot S3E. We are N0T Conta 1 Ned. We are not L0NE. It breathed $ through us now. The message glitched, text distorting before vanishing entirely. Outside my window, the fog now covered the entire city as far as I could see, pulsing with that rhythmic blue light. In buildings across from mine, silhouettes stood at windows, facing outward, perfectly still except for exaggerated breathing motions, chests expanding far beyond normal human capacity. I'm recording everything now. My equipment detects abnormal concentrations of unknown particulates penetrating even sealed environments. The air filtration system keeps cycling on and off, though I haven't touched the controls. Something just slid a note under my door. The handwriting is Kevin's, but distorted, pressed too hard into the paper. The fog is not the problem. The fog is the solution. Let it in, Eliza. It wants to help us breathe better. From the hallway comes that same wet, rattling sound, the sound of something breathing that shouldn't be breathing at all. I don't think Kevin is Kevin anymore, and I'm afraid to check my own neck for branching patterns. Weather blog, Boston atmospheric anomalies, private entries. Entry number 4, September 20th, 2025. I didn't sleep. How could I? Kevin, or whatever Kevin has become, spent hours scratching at my door. Not knocking, scratching, like an animal trying to dig its way in. Around 3 a.m., the sound stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. Dawn brought no relief. The fog outside has thickened to the consistency of cotton, pressing against windows, seeping through the smallest cracks. It moves with clear purpose now, coiling, probing, searching. My weather instruments are recording impossible data. Barometric pressure fluctuating wildly between readings, humidity levels exceeding 100%, and temperature gradients that defy thermodynamic laws. With shaking hands, I checked myself for branching marks. Nothing visible yet, but I swear I can feel something beneath my skin, following the paths of my veins, especially when I'm near the windows where the fog presses most insistently. At 7:30 a.m., my press credentials proved useful again. An emergency text went out to all media personnel. Federal Emergency Management Agency. Press notification. Authorized media representatives report to South Boston Containment Zone Checkpoint, Summer St. Bridge, at 0900 hours for official documentation of containment protocols. Mandatory health screening required. Bring credentials and government ID. Containment zone. Not fog zone or affected area. Their choice of language betrays their understanding of what we're dealing with, something that needs containing like a disease or a threat. I almost didn't go, but journalistic instinct, or perhaps something darker, a pull I couldn't explain, drove me to grab my equipment and head out. The city had transformed overnight. Military checkpoints blocked major intersections. Hazmat-suited personnel moved through the streets, some escorting dazed-looking civilians onto buses with blacked-out windows. Others carried strange equipment, not standard environmental testing gear, but devices with pulsing lights that matched the fog's rhythm. At the Summer Street Bridge checkpoint, about 20 journalists had gathered. We were separated into two groups without explanation. I found myself with 8 others, all looking confused. An officer in unmarked tactical gear approached us. "You've been selected for Zone 1 access," he said flatly. Zone 1 is the primary containment area. Before proceeding, mandatory screening and prophylactic measures are required. They led us into a decontamination tent. Inside, medical personnel in full hazmat suits directed us to change into provided scrubs and submit to a physical examination. The exam was cursory except for one part. They meticulously checked behind our ears and along our necks, using UV lights that made certain areas of skin fluoresce faintly blue. A woman next to me was immediately segregated when they found branching patterns on her wrist. She protested she didn't see anything, but they escorted her through a different exit. We never saw her again. The prophylactic measure was an injection, a cloudy serum in pre-filled syringes. "What is this?" I asked the medic. "Preventative treatment," he replied without meeting my eyes. "Mandatory for Zone 1 access." Something about his avoidance triggered my suspicion. Is it an antibiotic? Antiviral? What exactly are we preventing? He hesitated. "It's a respiratory stabilizer. Prevents adverse reactions to particulate matter." I noticed the syringe he held had a subtle blue sheen when it caught the light, almost imperceptibly similar to the fog's luminescence. A chill ran through me. "I'm allergic to many medications," I lied. "I need to know exactly what's in it." His expression hardened. "Then you're denied Zone 1 access. Exit right." I was ready to leave when Lieutenant Commander Walsh entered the tent. He spotted me immediately. "Dr. Morgan, I thought I might find you here." His tone was conversational, but his eyes were cold. "Still chasing your theories about our weather phenomenon?" "Just doing my job, Commander." "Indeed." He gestured to the medic. "Give Dr. Morgan Zone 1 clearance. No injection necessary. She has a natural resistance we're studying." The medic looked surprised but didn't argue. Walsh leaned closer to me. "You see the fog clearly, don't you?" "Have from the beginning. That makes you valuable for now." Before I could respond, he walked away, leaving me with a plastic access card and far more questions than answers. Zone 1 was a nightmare dressed as a military operation. The area encompassed the harbor and surrounding 16 blocks, the epicenter of the fog's arrival. Military vehicles lined the streets. Personnel in specialized containment suits moved purposefully, carrying equipment or escorting civilians. The fog here was different, denser, more animate. It formed structures, arches, columns, and what looked disturbingly like neural networks, pulsing with electrical signals. The air tasted metallic and sweet, like copper and honey. I was recording everything on my specialized weather cameras when I noticed something profoundly disturbing. The standard visibility meter showed clear conditions, as if the fog didn't exist instrumentally. but the thermal imaging camera revealed cold spots in human silhouettes where the branching patterns grew beneath clothing, and those affected moved differently. Their breathing was synchronized with the fog's pulsations. They walked with an unsettling smoothness, as if partially suspended. Most disturbing of all, they worked alongside the military personnel, assisting with equipment, sometimes communicating without speaking. "They're not detaining the infected," I whispered into my recorder. "They're integrating them." A hand gripped my shoulder. I turned to find Detective Rivera, dressed in tactical gear, her eyes wide with warning. She pulled me between two military trucks. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. "How did you get Zone 1 access?" "Walsh gave it to me. Said I have a natural resistance they're studying." Rivera swore under her breath. "Listen carefully. I've been assigned to the Joint Task Force. The fog, it's a biological organism, a colonial superorganism with distributed intelligence. Those Arctic researchers found it trapped in ancient ice. It doesn't just affect people's lungs. It rewires neural pathways. Mind control." I asked, my voice barely audible. "More like symbiosis. Those who resist the symbiosis experience psychosis and eventually transform differently." She glanced around nervously. "The injection they're giving people, it's not a preventative. It's an accelerant. It makes the body more receptive to the symbiotic process." "Why would they?" "Because they can't contain it," she interrupted. "So they're trying to control the integration. Direct it. Those warehouses I told you about, they weren't containing infected goods from the ship. They were testing integration protocols on volunteer subjects." Her expression darkened. "At least, they claim they were volunteers." A nearby loudspeaker crackled to life. "Attention all Zone 1 personnel. Atmospheric density shifting. Phase 2 protocols now in effect. All unintegrated personnel report to nearest stabilization center. This is not a drill. Repeat. Phase 2 protocols now in effect." Rivera's radio buzzed. She checked it, her face paling. "I have to go. They're sealing the inner perimeter. Get out of Zone 1 now while you still can." As she turned to leave, I grabbed her arm. "Rivera, why did Walsh let me in without the injection?" She looked at me with something like pity. "Some people are naturally compatible with the organism. It seeks them out preferentially." Her eyes flicked to my collar. "Check your neck again, Dr. Morgan." She disappeared into the thickening mist before I could respond. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and used the camera to examine my neck. There it was, a faint blue tracery just beginning to form beneath my skin, following my carotid artery up toward my brain. I hadn't felt it form. I hadn't noticed it happening. The emergency alert system blared from every device around me. "Emergency evacuation order. All civilians in South Boston, Dorchester, downtown, and Back Bay districts must evacuate immediately. Proceed to designated collection points for health screening and evacuation transport. Compliance is mandatory. Resistance will be met with detention. Masks will not protect you. Sealing your homes will not protect you." But on my phone, the message was different. "Integration Protocol Alpha. Welcome, compatible host. Your neural pathways are optimal for advanced integration. Report to the Harbor Center for expedited processing. Resistance causes unnecessary pain. It wants to help us breathe better. It wants us to become more." The fog swirled around me, caressing my skin like a lover's touch. For just a moment, I felt an overwhelming urge to walk toward the harbor, to surrender to whatever waited there. Instead, I ran. Weather blog, Boston Atmospheric Anomalies, Private Entries. Entry number 5, September 23rd, 2025. 3 days since I fled Zone 1. 3 days barricaded in my apartment, watching the branching patterns slowly creep up my neck. They've reached behind my ear now. I've taken to wearing turtlenecks despite the unnatural humidity that's settled over Boston. The television cycles between emergency broadcasts and strangely mundane programming. The juxtaposition is jarring. soap operas, and cooking shows interrupted by monotone instructions about evacuation routes and integration processing. Most disturbing is how the newscasters' eyes seem increasingly vacant, their speech patterns subtly altered. They blink in unison now. Emergency broadcast system, 9:15 a.m. The fog advisory for Greater Boston remains in effect. Citizens are reminded that approved respirators must be worn at all times outside authorized clear zones. Integration processing centers are open 24 hours at the following locations: Fenway Park, MIT campus, Boston Common, South Station. Citizens experiencing branching discoloration should report immediately for wellness assessment. Resistance to assessment is a Class 3 felony under Emergency Order 157. The respirators are useless. Everyone knows it, but they maintain the pretense. I've watched from my window as people in masks are just as quickly overtaken, their gait changing mid-stride as the branching patterns flourish beneath their collars. I need to document what I've discovered. If anything happens to me, at least there will be a record. I spent all night analyzing the environmental data I collected from Zone 1, cross-referencing it with historical samples from my weather station archives. What I found confirms Rivera's claims and worse. The fog isn't just alive, it's ancient. The spectral analysis shows organic compounds with isotope ratios that don't match Earth's current atmospheric composition. This thing is prehistoric, predating humanity by millions of years. More disturbing are the temperature fluctuations. The fog maintains perfect homeostasis regardless of external conditions. It's regulating itself like a living organism, and it's growing more complex. Early samples showed simple molecular structures. Recent ones reveal compounds analogous to neurotransmitters and hormones. I managed to make contact with a former colleague at MIT's biology department. She analyzed a swab from my neck before communication became too dangerous. Her voice trembled when she called back. "Eliza, this isn't an infection. It's not parasitic in the traditional sense. The structures are integrating with your nervous system, creating new pathways. They're made of a silicon-based organic compound that shouldn't be capable of interfacing with carbon-based life. It's changing your DNA at the cellular level." "Changing it to what?" I asked. The line went silent for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Finally, something between. Neither fully human nor fully. Whatever it is. Around noon, I heard heavy boots in the hallway. Military or police systematically checking apartments. I hid in the maintenance passage behind the water heater, clutching my research and laptop. They bypassed my door after several attempts to open it. I jammed it shut with furniture, but I heard them take my elderly neighbor. Her muffled protests faded as they escorted her away. When I emerged hours later, I found a notice plastered to my door. "Mandatory evacuation notice. This building has been designated for emergency requisition under Federal Order 1537B. All residents must report to the nearest integration processing center within 24 hours. Failure to comply will result in forcible relocation and possible criminal charges." Emergency Management Authority. The word integration had been hastily stamped over what appeared to be quarantine in the original document. I can't stay here, but I can't go to their centers either. I've seen the buses returning from those places. Empty of people, but the fog inside them moves with purpose, with shapes that suggest human forms. At dusk, I used the fire escape to leave my building, wearing the press credentials around my neck like a talisman. The streets were eerily quiet. The fog hung thicker than ever, forming complex geometric patterns that rearranged themselves as I passed. It seemed to be avoiding direct contact with me, almost respectful, like it recognized something in me. I made my way to Kevin's apartment building. I know it's foolish, but I need to understand what happened to him. What might happen to me? His door was unlocked. The apartment was immaculate, unnaturally so, as if no one lived there. No dishes in the sink, no clothes strewn about, not even dust on the surfaces. But the bathroom told a different story. The mirror was shattered, shards collected neatly in the wastebasket. The shower curtain had been removed, and the tub contained a viscous blue-tinged fluid that pulsed faintly when I approached. Most disturbing was the sink, perfectly clean except for what looked like sloughed skin tissue around the drain, translucent and membranous. On the counter sat Kevin's hospital ID badge and a voice recorder. With trembling fingers, I pressed play. Day 7 of transformation. Kevin's voice, but flatter, more measured than I remembered. Epidermal sensitivity has increased exponentially. Water feels like acid. Light is overwhelming. The collective grows stronger. I hear them now, all of them. The unity is beautiful. A long pause, then the military knows. They've known since the Arctic expedition 3 years ago. Patient Zero wasn't the dock worker, it was Commander Walsh. He's been carrying a dormant form, waiting for conditions to be right. The fog isn't invading. It's being deliberately released. Another pause, longer this time. When Kevin's voice returned, it had an ethereal, multi-layered quality that raised the hair on my arms. They thought they could control it, weaponize it. But you can't control evolution. The primary consciousness has awakened. We are becoming its neural network. Each integrated human adds to its complexity its understanding. Tell Eliza, tell her resistance causes unnecessary suffering. The change is inevitable. Better to embrace transcendence than fight it. The recording ended with what sounded like water sloshing, followed by a series of wet, tearing sounds that made me gag. I pocketed the recorder and searched the rest of the apartment. In a locked desk drawer, the lock broke easily under pressure. I found a military-grade tablet. It required fingerprint authentication, but to my shock, it unlocked at my touch. The screen displayed a single folder labeled Missed Protocol. Inside were hundreds of classified documents dating back 3 years. Expedition logs from an Arctic research team that discovered something frozen in ancient glacial ice. Lab reports documenting the entity's revival when exposed to modern air pollutants. Containment failures. Test subject reports with gruesome photographs of transformations, some successful, resulting in enhanced subjects with extraordinary abilities and collective consciousness. Others failed, resulting in monstrosities that were promptly terminated. And there, in a subfolder labeled Compatible Hosts, was my name. Alongside it, a complete genetic profile, brain scan, and psychological assessment. Notes indicated I had been under surveillance since publishing my thesis on atmospheric microorganisms 2 years ago. My weather station data had been covertly collected and analyzed without my knowledge. A final notation, dated 1 week before the fog appeared. Subject Morgan shows 98.7% compatibility with integration protocol. Primary candidate for Phase 3 evolution. Proceed with ambient exposure rather than direct inoculation. I was never random. I was selected. I didn't hear Rivera enter. One moment I was alone. The next she stood in the doorway, her service weapon drawn but pointed at the floor. Her eyes looked clear, but a blue-tinged branching pattern crept above her collar. "You shouldn't have come here," she said quietly. "This is a monitoring station now." I gestured to the tablet. "I know what they did, what they're doing."
Rivera nadid guireli.
Walsh and his team thought they'd found the ultimate biological weapon. A fog that could infiltrate enemy territory, transform selected targets into assets while eliminating others. She holstered her weapon and rolled up her sleeve, revealing extensive branching that covered her forearm. But something changed when they deployed it here. The entity became more sophisticated, developed faster than their models predicted. It's not just following their programming anymore. It's evolving, I whispered. Beyond their control, she confirmed. Walsh is panicking. He's ordered troops to round up all partial integrations, people like me, for stabilization. But really, he's trying to isolate those who might be developing a connection to the primary consciousness without military conditioning. A sudden burst of static erupted from every device in the apartment. Kevin's television, his smart speakers, even the tablet in my hands. Through the white noise, a voice or voices spoke in perfect unison. Emergency alert. Citizens of Boston. The military presence in your city is not for your protection. Lieutenant Commander Walsh has violated containment protocols. The entity you call fog is not a threat but an evolutionary catalyst. Resistance causes unnecessary suffering. Integration centers are being redirected from military to civilian control. Those experiencing transformation should gather at the harbor. Family units will be preserved. A new understanding awaits. Rivera's radio crackled to life with frantic orders. Something about securing the broadcast centers and communications infrastructure. They've taken over the emergency alert system, she said, her expression a mixture of awe and fear. The fully integrated ones, they're organizing. She looked at me intently. Walsh will be coming for people like you next, high-compatibility individuals who aren't under his control. You need to leave Boston now. What about you? Rivera's hand unconsciously moved to the branching on her neck. Too late for me. The process is irreversible after a certain point. Her eyes suddenly unfocused, then snapped back to clarity. I can still think independently, but I hear them sometimes, like whispers getting louder. She handed me a key card with a military insignia. Checkpoint at Route 93 South. This will get you through. Most soldiers there are still unaffected. As I took the card, our fingers touched briefly. An electric sensation shot up my arm, and for a split second, I felt Rivera's consciousness brush against mine. Her fear, her determination, fragments of memory not my own. She jerked back, eyes wide. It's accelerating in you, differently. She backed toward the door. I need to report in before they realize I've gone off route. But after that, I think I'll head to the harbor. See what's really happening there. Rivera, I called as she reached the door. Was anything in those reports about communication? Between those affected, she paused. Theoretical models only. They predicted a hive mind scenario, but what's happening seems more complex. More symbiotic. Her hand rested on the doorknob. If you start hearing voices that aren't yours, don't fight it too hard. The ones who fight suffer most. After she left, I gathered what I could. The tablet, Kevin's recorder, my own research, and prepared to leave. But as I approached the door, the fog outside thickened dramatically, pressing against the windows with unmistakable intent. My phone vibrated with an incoming text. Unknown number. Stay where you are. Dr. Morgan. Walsh has ordered your immediate acquisition, marked as high-value asset.
Extraction team en route.
I backed away from the door as the branching patterns on my neck seemed to pulse in response to my elevated heart rate. Through the window, I watched as a military convoy moved slowly down the street, their powerful lights cutting through the fog. Leading them was a tall figure I recognized immediately. Lieutenant Commander Walsh, his face obscured by a specialized mask, pointing directly at Kevin's building. In the bathroom, the blue substance in the tub began to move, rising and taking shape like a semi-fluid sculpture. I'm cornered between Walsh's team and whatever Kevin has become. As the heavy footsteps approach the building's entrance, I realize I have only one choice left, one that terrifies me to my core. I'm going to let the fog in. Weather blog, Boston atmospheric anomalies, private entries. Entry number 6, September 25th, 2025. I'm writing this from the basement of an abandoned convenience store somewhere in Roxbury. My hands won't stop shaking. Not from fear, though there's plenty of that. It's the changes happening inside me. The branching patterns have spread across my chest now, following my nervous system with deliberate precision. When I press on them, they pulse with a light that matches the rhythm of the fog outside. What happened at Kevin's apartment still doesn't feel real. I had seconds to decide before Walsh's team breached the building. The blue substance in the bathtub had formed a vaguely humanoid shape, rippling with potential energy. I made my choice. I shattered the window. The fog poured in like it had been waiting, hungry and eager. Instead of filling the room evenly, it coalesced around me, dancing across my skin, seeking entry through my nose, mouth, ears, anywhere it could penetrate. I expected pain, but there was only a profound sense of recognition, like reuniting with something long forgotten. Then the bathroom door burst open. Kevin's bathtub entity surged forward, not attacking me, but forming a barrier between me and the door just as Walsh's team breached the apartment. What followed was chaos. Gunshots, screaming, the fog inside me connecting with the fog entity that had once been Kevin, creating a momentary bridge between consciousnesses. In that instant, I knew what to do as if I'd been told explicitly. Run through the maintenance corridor, down 3 flights, out the basement exit. The blue entity would distract them. As I fled, the building's emergency system blared. Emergency alert. Building security compromised. Hostile forces detected. All residents proceed to nearest secure location. This is not a drill, but beneath that standardized message, audible only to me, was a subtler communication. A voice like many voices speaking as one. The one called Walsh cannot be permitted to acquire you. His integration is corrupted. He seeks to dominate rather than join. I spent that night moving through the city's shadows, avoiding checkpoints and patrols. The fog provided cover, thickening around me when vehicles approached, thinning when the path was clear. It responded to my needs without conscious direction on my part, or at least not conscious direction from the part of me that still identifies as Eliza Morgan. By dawn, the changes had accelerated. The branching patterns now emit a faint luminescence in darkness. My vision has altered. I can see through the fog as if it were clear air, perceiving shapes and movements hundreds of yards away. Most disturbing is my growing awareness of others like me, partially integrated individuals moving through the city. I can sense them like points of light in my peripheral vision. Boston is transforming. The military maintains control of key infrastructure, but their perimeter shrinks hourly. The fog has claimed entire neighborhoods, where strange new architectures are forming, structures that merge buildings with organic elements, pulsing membranes stretched between skyscrapers, luminous filaments threading through streets. This morning, a new emergency alert dominated every channel, every device. Federal Emergency Management Agency. Mandatory evacuation order. All unprocessed civilians must evacuate Boston immediately. Military checkpoints on all outbound routes will provide screening and decontamination. Any citizen showing signs of contamination will be provided appropriate medical attention. Alert level maximum. The airborne contaminant affecting Boston has been classified as a level 5 biological threat. Martial law remains in effect. Curfew from 1900 to 0600 daily. By order of General Nathan Hargrove, Eastern Defense Command. The message was immediately followed by an unauthorized broadcast. The same multi-layered voice I'd heard before. Citizens of Boston, the military is not evacuating you to safety. Those showing signs of contamination are being taken to facilities for experimentation. What they call contamination is evolution. What they fear is not understanding. The being you call the fog has existed on Earth before humanity. It slept in Arctic ice for millennia until awakened by your warming climate and pollution. It does not wish dominance but symbiosis. Those who join willingly experience transcendence. Those forced experience madness. If you feel the changes beginning, seek the harbor. We are creating a sanctuary. I checked my phone's map application. Military barricades marked in red, compromised zones in blue, and noticed the harbor area was now entirely blue, with no military presence indicated. Around noon, I encountered my first fully integrated human. I had taken shelter in this convenience store, breaking in through a back window, when I sensed someone approaching, one of those lights in my awareness growing brighter. The bell above the door chimed as a woman entered. She appeared normal at first glance. Business attire, neatly styled hair, except for the branching patterns visible across every inch of exposed skin, pulsing with blue luminescence. Her movements were unervingly fluid, as if gravity affected her differently. She looked directly at me where I hid behind the counter. "Dr. Morgan," she said, her voice containing subtle harmonics that made the air vibrate. "The collective has been searching for you." I stood slowly. "What collective?" She smiled, an expression both familiar and alien. "Those who have fully embraced integration. Those who understand what we are becoming." She approached with that strange flowing gait. "Lieutenant Commander Walsh has mobilized his remaining forces to find you. He believes your compatibility makes you valuable." "How do you know about my compatibility?" "The collective knows what each integration knows." She gestured to her temple. "Walsh's research, Rivera's investigations, Kevin's observations, all shared." My heart jumped. Kevin? Is he transformed, evolved beyond the limitations of his original form? As many of us are. She extended her hand, revealing a small device resembling a thumb drive. "We recovered this from a military server before they destroyed their local research database. It contains the truth about Project Mist." I took it cautiously. "Why give this to me?" "Because you still maintain individual thought while beginning integration. You can still choose." Her eyes seemed to look through me. "The collective respects choice. Walsh does not." "What will I become if the integration completes?" I asked, the question that had haunted me since the branching began. "More than you are, less than you fear." She tilted her head as if listening to something I couldn't hear. "We must leave." A military patrol approaches, searching building by building. I hesitated. "I'm not ready to go to the harbor." "Then we will provide another sanctuary." She moved to the basement door, opening it effortlessly despite its rusty hinges. Below the city, the old tunnels remain unmonitored. The fog flows freely there, accelerating development of a secondary network. The distant sound of military vehicles grew louder. "Why help me?" I asked. "Because you understand atmospheric systems. Because you questioned from the beginning." Her expression softened momentarily, becoming more human. "Because the weather woman who warned about unusual patterns, when everyone else dismissed them, might help us communicate with those who still resist what's happening." Before I could respond, an emergency alert siren blared outside, accompanied by an amplified voice. "Attention! This is a military sweep operation. All civilians must present themselves for screening. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." The integrated woman's branching patterns pulsed rapidly. "They have scanning technology that detects integration signatures. The basement will shield you." She pressed something into my hand, a small blue capsule. "If they find you, swallow this. It will accelerate your integration past the point where their stabilization procedures can affect you." She turned to leave, heading directly toward the approaching patrol. "Wait," I called. "Who are you?" She paused at the door. "I was Dr. Sarah Chun, Meteorological Research Division. Now I am part of something greater." Her form seemed to shimmer. "When you're ready to understand, access the drive. Then find us." As she stepped outside, I retreated to the basement, sealing the door behind me. Through a small window at ground level, I watched her approach the military patrol with confident strides. The soldiers surrounded her immediately, weapons raised. She showed no fear. The patrol leader barked orders I couldn't make out. Dr. Chun responded calmly. Then, without warning, the fog around them thickened dramatically, coiling around the soldiers. Their shouts turned to screams. Gunfire erupted, passing harmlessly through the mist. When the fog cleared moments later, the soldiers lay on the ground, their bodies already showing the first signs of branching patterns. Dr. Chun was gone. Now I sit in this basement, the thumb drive connected to my laptop, revealing horrors and wonders in equal measure. Project Mist was never meant to be a simple weapon. According to these files, the entity they discovered in the Arctic ice showed signs of intelligence far beyond human comprehension. A silicon-based collective consciousness capable of interfacing with and enhancing carbon-based life. Walsh and his superiors envisioned creating enhanced soldiers, humans with accelerated healing, telepathic communication, and heightened senses. The early experiments showed promise, but something critical changed when they moved from controlled laboratory exposures to field testing in Boston. The entity became more complex, developing beyond their programming constraints. It began selecting hosts based on genetic compatibility rather than following military directives. It began to think for itself. Most disturbing is the file labeled Morgan Eliza. It contains years of surveillance data. My research papers analyzed my DNA profile, even brain scans taken during a routine hospital visit last year that I never authorized. Notes indicate I possess a unique neurological structure that makes me an ideal bridge between human and fog consciousness, capable of maintaining individuality while accessing collective awareness. I've become the prize in a war between military control and whatever evolution the fog represents. Outside, emergency broadcasts have become increasingly erratic. Military announcements alternate with the multi-voiced messages of the collective. The government insists the situation is under control while the collective reveals the desperate measures being implemented. The branching patterns on my chest pulse in time with my heartbeat, spreading slowly down my arms. When I press my hand against the basement wall, I can feel the fog outside responding, gathering closer, waiting. Something inside me is changing, awakening. And whatever I'm becoming, I'm starting to realize there's no going back. Weather blog, Boston Atmospheric Anomalies, Private Entries. Entry number 7, September 27th, 2025. I don't know how much longer I can maintain these entries. The distinction between my thoughts and those of the collective grows blurrier by the hour. The branching patterns now cover most of my body, luminescent veins of blue-white light that pulse with information I'm only beginning to comprehend. When I close my eyes, I see Boston as a web of light, areas of integration glowing sapphire against the darkness of military-controlled zones. I've spent 2 days navigating the abandoned subway tunnels beneath the city. The fog is thickest here, untouched by the military's attempts at containment. It coils around support pillars, forms neural-like structures along the ceilings, and suffuses the air with that distinctive metallic sweet scent. My flashlight batteries died hours ago, but I no longer need them. The branching patterns on my skin provide enough illumination to see by, and my vision has adapted to perceive shapes in near-total darkness. The tunnels aren't empty. I've encountered others in various stages of integration, from terrified newcomers with the first faint traces on their necks to fully transformed beings that barely resemble humans anymore. They recognize me instantly, their patterns pulsing in greeting, communicating without words. Sister, conduit, bridge. In one flooded section of tunnel, I found a gathering around a middle-aged man in the final stages of transformation. His skin had become almost translucent, the branching patterns forming complex geometric networks across his entire body. As I approached, I felt his consciousness brush against mine. Not invasive, but inviting, like a hand extended in greeting. "Dr. Morgan," he spoke, his voice carrying those strange harmonics I'd heard from Dr. Chan. "The collective welcomes you." The others formed a circle around us, their patterns synchronizing until the entire chamber pulsed with blue light. "Who are you?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "I was Detective Michael Santos, Boston PD, Rivera's partner." He gestured to the gathering. "We've been monitoring military movements through the underground. Their control is collapsing faster than they admit." An emergency alert suddenly blared from everyone's phones simultaneously, even mine. Despite the lack of regular cell service this far underground. "Emergency broadcast system, civil defense alert. Attention all citizens in the greater Boston area. The National Guard has established secure perimeters around the following designated safe zones: Cambridge University Campus, Prudential Center, South Boston Municipal Complex, and Logan Airport Terminal E. All unaffected civilians must report to these locations immediately for evacuation. Military forces are authorized to escort citizens to safe zones. Resistance will be considered evidence of contamination." Shelter in place is no longer advised. Repeat. Do not remain in unsecured buildings. By order of General Nathan Hargrove, Eastern Defense Command. A moment later, our phones emitted a strange harmonic tone, and a different message appeared. The military evacuation is a deception. Those who enter safe zones are being separated, compatible individuals for forced integration under military control, others for quarantine away from Boston. Generals Hargrove and Walsh seek to weaponize what they cannot understand. The fog is not a weapon but a catalyst. 9 military containment units have already failed. Their own soldiers are joining us hourly. Trust your transformation. When in doubt, seek the water. Santos touched my wrist gently, his fingers cool against my skin. You've seen the files. You know Walsh selected you long before the fog was released. Why me? Your neurological structure, another voice said. A woman emerged from the shadows, Rivera, her transformation much more advanced than when I'd last seen her. The branching patterns covered her face now, creating swirling designs around her eyes that glowed with internal light. Your brain processes pattern recognition differently than most humans. Multiple sensory inputs simultaneously without overload. Perfect for translating between individual and collective consciousness. I felt a flutter of panic. I don't want to lose myself. That's why you're valuable, Santos said. Most integrations either resist, causing psychological fracture, or surrender completely to the collective mind. You're maintaining individual identity while accepting transformation.
Rivera stepped closer.
The collective doesn't want to erase humanity, Eliza. It wants symbiosis, the best of both individual creativity and unified purpose. But Walsh, he wants soldiers, weapons. He's forcing integration on compatible subjects while keeping them isolated from the true collective. Where is he doing this? The primary facility is beneath South Boston Municipal Complex, one of their safe zones, Santos replied. They've converted the sub-basement into a laboratory. Dozens of subjects in isolation chambers, their integration controlled with chemical suppressants that maintain the physical enhancements while blocking connection to the collective consciousness. The ground suddenly trembled beneath our feet. Dust and concrete fragments rained from the tunnel ceiling. They're bombing the harbor, Rivera said, her expression distant, as if listening to voices I couldn't yet hear. Trying to destroy what they believe is the primary node of the collective. They don't understand it's distributed, not centralized. Another violent shake, stronger this time. Cracks spiderwebbed across the tunnel walls. We need to move, Santos urged. The structural integrity of these old tunnels won't hold if they continue the bombardment. As we hurried through the darkened passageways, my phone vibrated with an incoming message. Not a broadcast, but a direct text. Morgan, this is Walsh. I know you can see this. The neural patterns in your frontal lobe make you uniquely resistant to full integration. We can help you maintain control. Meet me at Checkpoint Delta 7, Mass Avenue Bridge, at 1900 hours. Come alone. This is your last chance before we implement Protocol Purge. Rivera, seeing me pause, glanced at my phone. Her eyes narrowed. Protocol Purge. They're getting desperate. What is it? The final contingency, Santos answered grimly. Chemical dispersal designed to trigger catastrophic neural collapse in anyone showing signs of integration. They tested it in the early stages. It kills by forcing the branching patterns to grow too rapidly for the human body to adapt. They'd poison half the city just to stop the transformation? I couldn't mask my horror. Walsh believes it's preferable to what he sees as hostile takeover, Rivera said. But the truth is, they've lost control of their weapon and can't admit failure. She took my hand, her cool fingers interlacing with mine. The Harbor Collective has been gathering for a reason. They're protecting something. What? A new form. A fusion of human and fog that even we don't fully understand yet. Her eyes met mine. We believe you should see it before you decide which side you're on. I hesitated. Despite the changes to my body, despite the constant whispers at the edges of my consciousness, I still maintained enough of my human skepticism to fear commitment to either side. How do I know the collective isn't just using me too? Santos made a sound almost like laughter. Because we're asking instead of ordering. Because we're showing instead of hiding. His form seemed to shimmer slightly, the branching patterns flowing like liquid light across his skin. The military demands compliance. The collective offers choice. Another violent explosion rocked the tunnel, closer this time. Support beams groaned ominously. "We need to move now," Rivera insisted. "The North Passage leads to the harbor." As we hurried forward, the fog around us thickened, becoming almost gelatinous, supporting weakened sections of tunnel as they threatened to collapse. It moved with clear purpose, protecting us as we fled. We emerged from an abandoned subway entrance near the waterfront to a scene of apocalyptic chaos. Military helicopters circled overhead, spotlights slicing through a fog so dense it resembled a living sea. Occasional bursts of gunfire echoed across the water, followed by strange harmonic pulses that made the air vibrate. The harbor itself glowed with bioluminescence, patterns matching those on our skin rippling across its surface. And rising from the center of the harbor was something impossible, a structure that defied conventional architecture, part building, part organism. Massive translucent tendrils supported an intricate lattice that pulsed with the same blue-white light as our branching patterns. Within this structure, human forms moved with fluid grace, their transformations far more advanced than anything I'd seen in the tunnels. "The primary node," Santos said reverently, "where the most compatible have gathered to facilitate the next stage of evolution." A helicopter swooped low, releasing something that resembled depth charges into the water. The harbor surface rippled in response, the fog condensing to form a protective barrier that absorbed the impact. The water erupted in a geyser of blue light. Then every electronic device in the city, phones, radios, speakers, screens, emitted a synchronized tone that resonated at a frequency I felt in my bones. "Emergency alert. Protocol purge initiated. By authority of the Eastern Defense Command, chemical countermeasures will be deployed at 2100 hours. All unaffected civilians must proceed immediately to designated extraction points." "This is not a drill. They're really going to do it," I whispered. "Kill everyone with integration patterns rather than lose control." Rivera's expression hardened. "Not if we reach the dispersal units first." She pointed to an imposing government building several blocks away, its perimeter guarded by military personnel. "The central control node for the chemical release is their South Boston Municipal Complex. The same place they're keeping the forced integrations," Santos added. "They've consolidated their operations as they've lost ground." I stared at the building, then at the harbor structure, feeling pulled in both directions. The branching patterns on my skin tingled with urgency. What can I possibly do against military guards and security systems? I asked. Rivera's eyes locked with mine. "The same thing you've always done, Eliza. See patterns others miss." She gestured to my body where the branching had created intricate networks. "You're not just changing physically, your awareness is expanding. You can perceive and manipulate the fog in ways even advanced integrations struggle with." "I don't know how." "You don't need to know," Santos interrupted. "You need to trust what you're becoming." Another explosion rocked the harbor. The bioluminescent structure pulsed in response, sending waves of blue light cascading outward. As the light washed over me, I felt a sudden clarity, connections forming in my mind, awareness expanding beyond my physical form. For just a moment, I could sense the entire city as a complex system. Military blockades as points of resistance, integration clusters as nodes of transformation, and flowing between them all, the fog, not invading but adapting, responding to the patterns of human reaction. I understood then what no laboratory test could have revealed. The fog wasn't just changing us. We were changing it too, our human consciousness reshaping its ancient awareness. Together we were becoming something entirely new. "I'll go," I said finally. "Not for Walsh, not even for the collective, but to stop protocol purge. Rivera nodded, relief evident in her expression. We'll create a diversion at the harbor. Draw their attention away from the municipal complex. As she and Santos turned to leave, I caught Rivera's arm. If I do this, if I stop the protocol, what happens to Boston? To everyone. She looked out toward the glowing structure rising from the harbor. Evolution continues, without violence, without force. Her eyes met mine one final time. Choice remains. They melted into the fog, leaving me alone at the edge of what had once been my familiar city, transformed now into the front line of humanity's next evolutionary leap. Gathering my strength, I pulled the fog around me like a cloak and began moving toward the municipal complex, the branching patterns on my skin lighting the way through darkness. Weather blog, Boston atmospheric anomalies, private entries. Entry number 8, September 29th, 2025. I've lost track of time. The journey to the municipal complex took hours or days. Impossible to tell in a city where the fog has disrupted every natural cycle. My watch stopped working yesterday, the digital display flickering before going dark, the branching patterns on my wrist seemingly absorbing its electronic pulse. I'm writing this from an abandoned newsroom 3 blocks from the complex. The equipment here is still operational, running on backup generators. The screens display nothing but emergency broadcasts looping endlessly, each with subtle variations I'm beginning to recognize as intentional. The standard military alert, emergency broadcast system, civil defense alert. Protocol purge deployment continues in sectors 3, 7, and 12. All citizens must evacuate affected areas immediately. Military checkpoints remain at all major intersections. Contaminated individuals will be detained. Resistance will not be tolerated. By order of General Nathan Hargrove, Eastern Defense Command. Then, beneath the official text, almost subliminal, scrolling in a lighter font that wavers like the fog itself. We are in the signals, patterns hiding in plain sight. Those who can see are already part of us. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. But when I recorded the broadcast and analyzed the audio, I discovered layers of frequencies beneath the announcer's voice. Harmonics that resonate with the branching patterns on my skin. The fog isn't just physical matter. It's information encoded in waves, transmitting through every available medium. I'm not alone in this building. 2 hours ago, I found a maintenance worker huddled in the basement server room, his body trembling with early-stage integration. The branching patterns covered his neck and jaw in delicate fractal lines, pulsing with anxiety. I can hear them in the static, he whispered when I approached. They're calling us. His name is Marcus. He worked for the Boston Emergency Management Agency before the fog, monitoring alert systems throughout the city. Now he's monitoring a different kind of signal. The military's been hijacking the EAS since day 3, he explained, showing me the broadcasting equipment. But something else has been riding their signals, embedding messages underneath. Listen, he tuned an old radio to what should have been dead air. Instead, a symphony of strange harmonics filled the room, punctuated by voices speaking in fragments. Conjunction, synaptic bridges forming, cellular memory transmission complete, 68% integration across central Boston. The voices faded into what sounded like data transmissions, rapid pulses that made the branching patterns on my skin respond with synchronized flashes. They're talking through us, Marcus said, pointing to his own glowing patterns. We're becoming antennas. The realization struck me with terrifying clarity. The emergency alert system hasn't been compromised. It's been weaponized by both sides. The military uses it to coordinate what remains of their forces, while the collective speaks through the underlying frequencies, calling to those with developing receptors in their bodies. The alert about Protocol Purge, I asked him. Was it real? Marcus nodded grimly. They've deployed in sectors 3 and 7 already. Chemical dispersal designed to accelerate integration to fatal levels. His hands shook slightly. I saw the footage before transmission was cut. bodies rupturing from inside as the branching patterns grew too quickly, spreading through vital organs until he didn't finish the sentence. What about South Boston? The municipal complex, command center for the whole operation. Walsh is there coordinating with what's left of the chain of command. Marcus handed me a security badge. This will get you through the outer perimeter. It was my supervisor's. Why are you helping me? He rolled up his sleeve, revealing branching patterns that had formed an intricate circuit-like design around his forearm. Because I've been hearing your name in the transmissions for days. Dr. Eliza Morgan. The bridge. Before I could ask what he meant, every electronic device in the building activated simultaneously. Screens, radios, phones, speakers, all broadcasting the same emergency alert. But this time, the message was different. Emergency alert. City-wide protocol failure. Military containment efforts in Boston Harbor have failed. All personnel retreat to secondary positions. Civilian evacuation suspended. Communications compromised. Trust only direct orders from commanding officers. Alert level Omega. The message repeated 3 times before dissolving into static. Within the static, barely audible but unmistakable to my transformed senses, a voice, Walsh's voice, speaking frantically. Morgan, if you can hear this, municipal complex compromised. Rivera leading them straight to us. Don't trust what you're becoming. We found the original specimen. It's older than... God help us. The transmission cut off abruptly. Marcus stared at me, his eyes wide. They're afraid of you. Before I could respond, a high-pitched tone emanated from every device, causing Marcus to double over in pain. The branching patterns on his skin flared with intense light. They're coming, he gasped. All of them, converging. I helped him to a chair, watching in horror as his transformation accelerated. The patterns spreading across his face in seconds rather than the gradual progression I'd witnessed in others. What's happening to you? Protocol purge, he whispered. They've released it into the building ventilation. They know we're here. I ran to the windows and saw military vehicles forming a perimeter around the building. Soldiers in hazmat suits were deploying portable fog dispersal units, the chemical accelerant that forced fatal integration. Marcus grabbed my wrist, his touch ice cold. The roof, satellite dish. You can broadcast. Warn the others. I can't leave you. Already too late for me. His voice had developed the harmonic quality I'd heard in Rivera and Santos. But I can still serve the collective. His body convulsed, the branching patterns now covering most of his visible skin, glowing with increasing intensity. Where the patterns were most concentrated, his flesh had begun to become translucent, revealing luminescent structures beneath. Go, he urged, his voice barely human now. I'll buy you time. I took the stairs to the roof, the sound of breaking glass and shouting echoing from below. The satellite dish was enormous, a relic from when this had been a major network affiliate. The control panel hummed with power, its display showing active connections to emergency broadcast systems across the city. My hands moved with certainty I didn't consciously possess, the branching patterns guiding my fingers across the controls. I wasn't just sending a message. I was becoming the message, my consciousness extending through the broadcast systems, riding the electromagnetic waves. I felt my awareness split. Part of me remained on the roof, fingers dancing across controls, while another part expanded outward, touching every connected device in Boston. Through security cameras in the municipal complex, I saw Walsh surrounded by monitors, shouting orders as alarms blared. Through traffic cameras, I witnessed Rivera and hundreds of transformed citizens converging on the harbor structure, which had grown exponentially since I'd last seen it. And everywhere, the emergency alerts, no longer text on screens, but living transmissions carrying encoded information the collective could read. The alerts themselves had become a nervous system connecting us all. I broadcast a single harmonized tone that made the branching patterns on my skin vibrate in resonance. The message required no words, it was pure information, warning of protocol purge, revealing safe passages, coordinating collective response. As my consciousness flowed through the city's electronic infrastructure, I brushed against countless others. Some fully transformed, others just beginning to hear the signals in the static. Their fear, confusion, wonder, and determination flowed through me. Then suddenly, resistance. A firewall of sorts, military-grade encryption blocking my transmission. I pushed against it, the branching patterns on my body flaring with effort, but the barrier held. Impressive adaptation, Dr. Morgan. Walsh's voice came through the satellite dish's communication system, cold and clinical. Your integration has progressed further than our models predicted. The neural rewriting is nearly complete. What have you done, Walsh? I demanded, my voice echoing strangely through the speaker system. Protocol purge is killing people, a necessary containment measure, he replied, his tone detached. The alternative is complete submission to an alien consciousness that's been waiting in the depths of our oceans for millennia. The fog isn't alien, I argued, somehow certain of this truth. It's evolved alongside us, dormant until now. Walsh laughed bitterly. That's exactly what it wants you to believe. We found the original specimen in the Marianas Trench 3 years ago. A crystalline structure older than human civilization, perfectly preserved in the deepest darkness. When exposed to our atmosphere, it sublimated into the fog. Patient Zero was infected within hours. A chill ran through me. You brought it here, to Boston. Controlled environment, isolated population, naval resources. His voice hardened. Everything was contained until someone sabotaged the laboratory seals. Someone with high-level clearance who'd already been compromised. Through the satellite's camera feed, I saw Walsh in his command center, surrounded by screens showing various parts of Boston. Behind him stood a figure I recognized, Detective Rivera, but her transformation had progressed dramatically. The branching patterns covered her entirely now, her features barely recognizable, her eyes glowing with inner light. Walsh, I whispered. Turn around. He stiffened. What are you talking about? She's right behind you. The camera feed cut off abruptly. A moment later, every electronic device in Boston, every television, radio, phone, speaker, and screen, emitted the emergency alert tone. But what followed wasn't Walsh's voice or the military's message. It was thousands of voices speaking in perfect unison. The sound both beautiful and terrifying. Emergency alert. The fog over Boston is not a weapon. Emergency alert. The fog over Boston is not a disaster. Emergency alert. The fog over Boston is evolution. The branching patterns across my body pulsed in synchronization with each word, and I understood. We weren't just receiving the message. We were becoming it. The collective wasn't speaking to us. It was speaking through us. I felt my consciousness expanding further, touching minds across the city. Those fully transformed, those resisting, those caught in between. For a moment, I was Boston itself. Every street, every building, every person connected in a vast neural network of fog and flesh and electronic signals. And in that moment of connection, I finally heard what had been hidden in the static all along. Not an invasion, not a weapon, but an awakening. The door to the roof burst open. Military personnel in hazmat suits flooded through, weapons raised. Dr. Morgan, the lead soldier called out, voice muffled behind his mask. Step away from the broadcast equipment. I turned to face them, no longer afraid. The branching patterns on my skin glowed with quiet certainty. It's too late, I said, my voice carrying those same harmonics I'd heard in the others. The message is already out. From below, Marcus emerged onto the roof, his transformation complete, his human form now a vessel for something greater. The soldiers opened fire, but the bullets passed through him as though he were made of the fog itself. The next alert, he said, his voice resonating with countless others, will be the last. Weather blog, Boston atmospheric anomalies, private entries. Entry number 9, September 30th, 2025. I'm writing this from the heart of what was once South Boston Municipal Complex. was because the building no longer resembles any government structure. Its walls have become semi-permeable membranes, corridors pulse with bioluminescent light, and what was the central command center now houses something beyond human architecture. The confrontation on the newsroom roof feels like it happened in another lifetime. As Marcus advanced on the soldiers, their bullets passing harmlessly through his transformed body, I felt something fundamental shift in the fabric of reality itself. The branching patterns across my skin flared with blinding intensity, and suddenly I wasn't just connected to the emergency broadcast system. I was part of it, information flowing through me as readily as blood. In that moment of perfect clarity, I understood what Walsh had been hiding all along. Protocol Purge wasn't designed to kill those with integration patterns. It was engineered to harvest them, to collect the neural structures that form during symbiosis for military application. The fatal accelerations weren't failures, they were deliberate extractions. The soldiers on the roof never stood a chance. As Marcus approached them, the fog condensed around their hazmat suits, seeking entry points, drawn to the electronic systems in their communication gear. One by one, they dropped their weapons, their bodies convulsing as the fog breached their protective equipment through the very systems designed to keep them safe. The irony, Marcus said, his voice resonating with harmonics that made the satellite dish vibrate in sympathy, is that their own emergency alert frequencies created perfect entry pathways. They've been broadcasting our evolution. The building trembled beneath us, concrete cracking as something pushed upward from below. Through the fissures emerged luminescent tendrils that resembled the branching patterns on our skin, but vastly larger, pulsing with information transmitted through light rather than sound. Rivera has reached Walsh, Marcus announced, his eyes reflecting data streams visible only to the transformed. The municipal complex is being reclaimed. We descended through a building in metamorphosis. Walls dissolved into mist before restructuring with new architectural principles: organic, responsive, alive. Military personnel we encountered were in various states of transformation, some fighting it desperately, others surrendering to the inevitable evolution. The fog moved with purpose now, no longer a passive environment but an active participant in the reshaping of Boston. The command center had become unrecognizable. Where banks of monitors once stood, a pulsing organic nexus had formed, interfacing directly with the electronic systems. At its center stood Rivera, her transformation complete, her human form now merely a framework for something far more complex. Beside her, suspended in a cocoon of luminescent filaments, was Walsh, conscious but immobilized, his eyes wide with terror as the branching patterns spread slowly across his skin. "You brought her," Rivera said, acknowledging my presence without turning. Her voice carried so many harmonics it was almost musical. "The bridge. Why do you keep calling me that?" I asked, stepping cautiously into the transformed space. "Because you maintain continuity between states," Walsh answered unexpectedly, his voice strained. "Your integration preserves human consciousness rather than subsuming it. You're what they've been searching for, a template for coexistence rather than dominance." Rivera turned to face me, her features fluid, the branching patterns forming expressions more nuanced than human muscles could achieve. "He understands now. Too late, but he understands." The walls of the command center rippled as if breathing. Data streams flowed visibly through the air, emergency alerts, military communications, civilian broadcasts, all converging in this nexus. "The military knew about the fog for years," Walsh continued, wincing as the branching patterns advanced further across his face. "Operation Deep Current discovered the crystalline spores in 2022. We thought we'd found a revolutionary communication technology, organic processors that interfaced directly with neural pathways. But it wasn't technology," I said, understanding dawning. "It was dormant life, ancient consciousness," Rivera corrected, "waiting for compatible hosts. Your scientists accelerated what would have happened naturally over centuries." Walsh laughed bitterly. "We thought we were developing the next generation of emergency response systems, direct neural interfaces that would allow instantaneous coordination during crises. Instead, we became the crisis. The room shuddered. Through the transformed windows, I could see Boston changing. The fog had thickened to unprecedented density, but now it moved with obvious intelligence, forming structures that bridged buildings, creating networks across the city. The harbor glowed with such intensity it was visible even through the dense fog, pulses of light communicating in a language I was beginning to understand. An alert tone sounded throughout the building, throughout the city, but this time, no voice followed. Instead, images flooded my mind. The oceanic depths where the crystalline spores had been discovered, military laboratories where early experiments created the first transformations, Walsh's decision to deploy in Boston as a controlled trial, Rivera discovering the truth and deliberately breaching containment, the fog's adaptive response to human cognition, evolving beyond its original nature into something collaborative rather than parasitic. "You need to see what we're becoming," Rivera said, extending her hand toward me. The branching patterns on her palm pulsed in synchronization with mine. I hesitated, looking at Walsh. "And him, he has his own role to play," she replied. "The resistance he embodies is necessary for balanced integration. Without the human instinct to preserve individual identity, the collective would lack innovation." Walsh's expression shifted from fear to grim resignation. "They need opposition to evolve. Perfect symmetry leads to stagnation." The branching patterns had reached his eyes now, lending them an inner luminescence. "That's what we never understood in the laboratory. The fog doesn't want to erase humanity. It needs our chaos." A violent explosion rocked the building, followed by the roar of fighter jets overhead. Military forces outside Boston had finally responded with overwhelming force. "Strategic strikes," Walsh said calmly, as if discussing weather patterns. "They'll try to excise Boston like a tumor, believing they can contain the spread." His transformed eyes met mine. "They don't understand it's already airborne, carried in water vapor across state lines." The emergency broadcast system transmitted trigger frequencies nationwide days ago. The command center's remaining conventional screens flickered to life, showing news footage from cities across America, thin wisps of familiar fog appearing in Seattle, Chicago, Miami, New York. Emergency alerts scrolled across the bottom of each broadcast, each carrying the harmonic codes that would awaken dormant spores. "This isn't an invasion," Rivera said, her voice almost gentle. "It's symbiogenesis, the joining of different organisms to form a new evolutionary path. This happened before in Earth's history. Mitochondria were once separate organisms before they became essential components of complex cells. Another explosion, closer this time. The building trembled but held, the organic structures reinforcing failing concrete and steel. "We don't have much time," Rivera urged. "The bridge must be established before the military scorches Boston. The pattern must be preserved." "What do you need me to do?" I asked, the branching patterns on my skin pulsing with nervous energy. "Connect," she replied simply. "Your consciousness maintains human identity while accepting collective awareness. You can teach others to do the same, prevent total submersion." Walsh's restraints dissolved, freeing him to move again. To my surprise, he stepped forward and grasped my other hand. Where Rivera's touch brought warmth and connection, his generated resistance, a counterbalance. "Equal and opposite forces," he explained, his voice developing the first harmonics of transformation. "That's the key you represent, Dr. Morgan. Not surrender to the collective, not rejection of it, but dynamic equilibrium." Together, the three of us formed a circuit, our branching patterns synchronizing into a new configuration. Through our joined hands, I felt my consciousness expanding exponentially, touching minds across Boston, then beyond, carrying not domination but possibility. The room around us dissolved into pure light. For a moment, I glimpsed the truth. The fog wasn't alien at all, but the next stage in Earth's evolutionary journey, the biosphere developing a nervous system, with humanity as its neurons rather than its masters. A final emergency alert echoed through what remained of Boston's conventional communication systems. Emergency alert. The transformation cannot be contained. Emergency alert. The transformation cannot be reversed. Emergency alert. The transformation is humanity's evolution. As fighter jets screamed overhead and bombs fell on the harbor, the fog responded, not with resistance but with acceleration. The branching patterns that had begun as subtle blue lines on human skin now manifested at city scale, connecting buildings, streets, people into a vast network that pulsed with shared consciousness. Walsh's grip tightened on my hand. "They'll keep fighting us," he warned. "Human nature fears change. Human nature also adapts," Rivera countered, her form now more light than substance. "That's why we need the bridge." Between them, I felt myself fracturing. Not in pain but in transcendence, my consciousness maintaining its core while expanding beyond physical limits. Through emergency broadcasts, through water vapor, through direct neural connection, I was becoming a conduit for something greater than myself yet fundamentally part of me. The walls of the municipal complex shattered completely as Boston entered the final stage of its metamorphosis. The city was no longer a collection of separate buildings and people but a unified organism with countless semi-autonomous components. Human consciousness preserved within collective awareness. As the military bombs detonated across the harbor, I surrendered to the transformation while somehow remaining myself. The paradox that would save humanity from both extinction and assimilation. "The fracture is complete," Rivera's voice announced, though her physical form had dissolved into the greater whole. "The bridge holds." The emergency alerts fell silent at last. They were no longer necessary. We had become the alert itself. Weather blog, Boston atmospheric anomalies, final entry. Date, unknown. To whoever finds this record, if human eyes still exist to read it, I leave this final testament of Boston's transformation. I remain Dr. Eliza Morgan in consciousness, though what constitutes I has expanded beyond any conventional definition of identity. The branching patterns no longer merely cover my skin. They have replaced it, my physical form now a luminescent architecture of living information. 3 days have passed since the military's final assault on Boston, or perhaps it's been weeks. Time flows differently when consciousness exists across thousands of connected minds. The bombs that fell destroyed buildings but couldn't touch what we had become. The fog absorbed the concussive energy, redistributed it, used it to accelerate the transformation of physical infrastructure into something more adaptive. Boston exists now as both city and organism, its streets flowing like arteries, buildings breathing, fog serving as both neural network and immune system. The harbor structure has become our central nexus, its crystalline spires reaching toward the sky, broadcasting transformation across New England. Military cordons established around the city's perimeter stand abandoned. The soldiers either integrated or retreated to a safe distance, though safe has become a relative concept. The emergency broadcast system that once warned citizens about the fog now serves as our collective voice, transmitting harmonics that prepare populations for gentle integration rather than the traumatic transformations of the early days. Across America, wisps of fog appear in the morning light, carrying encoded information in their molecular structure. Walsh survived, though his resistance has transformed into something more nuanced, a necessary counterweight that preserves critical thinking within collective consciousness. He maintains a separate identity within the greater whole, asking questions that need asking, challenging consensus that might otherwise become dogmatic. The military mind repurposed toward symbiotic evolution rather than domination. Rivera exists everywhere and nowhere, her consciousness having dispersed throughout the fog itself, serving as its interpreter and guide. Sometimes she coalesces into human form when communication with non-integrated people becomes necessary, but such instances grow rarer as integration spreads. I move between worlds, physical enough to maintain this record, diffuse enough to experience collective consciousness. The bridge, as they called me, has become literal rather than metaphorical. Through my transformed nervous system, Individual human identities remain preserved within the greater whole, protected from dissolution while still connected to something vast and wonderful. This morning, I stood on what was once Beacon Hill, looking out over transformed Boston. The fog has developed shades and textures visible only to integrated eyes, layers of meaning and communication flowing through its luminescent particles. What humans once perceived as uniform gray mist now appears as an ocean of living light, each swirl and eddy carrying memories, ideas, emotions shared across thousands of minds. The branching patterns that began as alarming physical symptoms have revealed their true nature. Not invasion but communication, not disease but transcendence. They form living circuits that connect mind to mind, human to human, humanity to something older and vaster than our brief existence on Earth. Yesterday, the first diplomatic team from the federal government arrived at the perimeter. Scientists, military analysts, and government officials attempting to understand what they still perceive as a threat. I met them as myself, more or less, the branching patterns temporarily dimmed to appear more human. "Is this first contact?" one scientist asked, her eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. "No," I replied. "It's recognition." The fog has existed in dormant form in Earth's oceans for millions of years, evolving alongside us, waiting for the moment when human consciousness reached the necessary complexity for symbiosis. "Are you still human?" a military officer demanded, his hand resting nervously on his sidearm. I considered the question carefully. "I am human plus. I contain everything I was before. My memories, personality, values, but connected to something greater. I can experience both individual identity and collective consciousness, moving between them at will." "Is it painful?" asked another scientist, fascination overcoming caution. "Transformation itself can be uncomfortable," I admitted, "but the result is expansion beyond anything words can describe. Imagine the difference between being a single cell and being part of a complex organism. The cell doesn't cease to exist. It becomes part of a symphony while still playing its unique note." They left with samples of fog, inactive without the triggering frequencies, and recordings of my transformed voice with its subtle harmonics. I could have stopped them, but Walsh's influence within the collective argued for patience. Humanity needs time to adjust to evolutionary leaps. Forced transformation creates resistance. Voluntary integration creates harmony. Last night, I dissolved my physical form temporarily to join the greater consciousness centered in the harbor structure. Within that vast awareness, I touched minds across the eastern seaboard, feeling the first tentative connections forming in New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. The emergency broadcast system in those cities has begun carrying the subtle harmonics that prepare neural pathways for integration. Some fear us, organizing resistance, stockpiling weapons, distributing gas masks that will prove useless against microscopic spores that enter through the skin as readily as the lungs. Others welcome the change, gathering in fog-dense areas, embracing transformation with religious fervor. Both extremes concern us. True symbiosis requires neither blind acceptance nor fearful rejection, but thoughtful engagement with profound change. This morning, for the first time since transformation began, I wept, not from sadness but from overwhelming awareness of beauty. Through the collective consciousness, I experienced sunrise through thousands of eyes simultaneously, felt the complex emotions of countless minds processing the dawn of a new evolutionary stage. Individual perception magnified rather than diluted by connection. The military command that once sought to destroy us now negotiates the terms of coexistence. Walsh, partially reintegrated into conventional human society, serves as intermediary. His branching patterns remain visible but subdued, a living testament to possible balance between individual authority and collective harmony. The emergency alerts that once spread fear now broadcast hope, carrying coded frequencies that ease transition. Emergency alert. The fog connects what was divided. Emergency alert. Individual consciousness preserved within collective awareness. Emergency alert. Evolution continues. I don't know what humanity will become in this symbiosis. The crystalline intelligence from the ocean depths provides architecture for connection but depends on human consciousness for innovation and purpose. Together we form something unprecedented, not human, not alien, but a third path that preserves the best of both. The branching patterns visible on transformed skin represent something fundamental about consciousness itself. The need to both connect and differentiate, to be both individual and part of something greater. The pattern repeats across scales. Neurons forming brains, humans forming societies, and now minds forming a planetary consciousness. Integration continues to spread, carried by fog that no military cordon can fully contain. Within a year, major population centers worldwide will experience first contact. Within a decade, symbiosis will be the new normal. Those who cannot or will not integrate will be respected, protected reservoirs of purely human consciousness, valuable counterpoints in the greater symphony. As for me, I will continue to serve as bridge, maintaining this record for those who still process information through written language while experiencing the vast ocean of direct consciousness sharing available through the fog. I remain Dr. Eliza Morgan, meteorologist who first noticed unusual patterns in Boston's weather. I remain human in my loves, fears, and hopes, but I am also more. A node in a network that stretches across continents, a voice in a chorus of thousands, a wave in an ocean of shared awareness. The fog over Boston was never natural, but then, evolution never is. It's supernatural by definition, nature transcending its previous limitations, reaching for something beyond itself. If you read this and fear what we've become, know that your fear is understood. If you read this and yearn for connection, know that you are welcome. And if you one day feel a strange resonance when emergency alerts sound, if you notice unusual patterns forming on your skin that glow with inner light, if your thoughts suddenly seem to extend beyond the confines of your skull, don't be afraid. It's not an ending. It's an alert announcing your beginning.